Hey, my name is Anna.
And I'm Jack.
And we're here to present our findings on demographic factors in CS1 in relation to spatial skills. We will go into more details about the specifics of our study in a moment, but the main procedure to highlight is as follows. We conducted somewhat novel spatial skills training with a cohort of CS1 students, collected data on several factors associated with both spatial skills and computing success, and examined the semester-long data collection to validate previously existing connections and seek new ones.
Before going any further, we should say what we mean by spatial skills. Spatial skills are cognitive abilities related to consolidating space and structure, particularly internally. Spatial abilities are often best understood by considering tests that expose their different factors, which include rotation tests, perception tests, and paper folding tests, to mention a few. This test is the PSVTR, a test of 3D mental rotation. It has been used as a general measure of spatial ability in STEM domains for many years, and is also the measure that we used in this study. It consists of 30 items, much like this one, of increasing complexity, and is timed to be taken within 20 minutes. You might be wondering why we even care about spatial skills in a computing context. Well, the evidence suggesting that these skills are related to success in computing is starting to seriously mount, with spatial skills being associated with module grades in CS university courses, source code navigation, computational thinking activities, expression evaluation, and socioeconomic status. 3 independent studies have also demonstrated that spatial skills training appears to improve computing outcomes for entry-level students. Why exactly the relationship exists, we still aren't certain, though the main theories associate spatial ability with one's aptitude for constructing robust mental models and encoding non-verbal information.
Not only do spatial skills appear to have a direct relationship with computing outcomes, here are several factors over which spatial skills and success in computing have historically overlapped. One of the major contributions of this study was to examine how some of these factors, such as socioeconomic status, gender, and prior programming experience, manifest when examining them, not only in a computing context, but also with a mind toward how spatial skills interact with these factors. For example, the gender gap in computing is well documented and exists in spatial ability with similar challenges. Utter and others discovered that women typically have lower spatial skills than men, but the differences are not inherent and spatial skills are highly malleable. With training, these divisions can be addressed. This study specifically examines the relationship between spatial skills, success in introductory computing, and other factors listed in the context of an introductory computing course. Specifically, the study took place at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, in an introductory Python course running in the September to December semester of 2020. The course is a requirement for math, stats, and computer science majors, and is open to admission from other streams too. The course was run entirely online.
There are many ways to train spatial skills, though a tried and tested method has been developed by Cheryl Sorby, who has been training the spatial skills of engineers with her training program for over 20 years. Her course consists of drilling exercises, from multiple choice to isometric drawing, which is designed to gradually and incrementally improve one's visualization. The course is designed to be done on paper, though for this study an entirely online version of the course was developed by the University of Glasgow, which consists of all the same questions in the same format, which can be completed in a web browser.
The goal of our first research question was to shadow existing studies in CS1 with spatial skills to determine whether spatial skills training could be effectively delivered online. The second research question addressed whether or not the training was equally beneficial to men and women. The third research question related to spatial skills connection with other demographic tied to success in computing. Of the 778 students originally enrolled in the CS1 course, 670 students completed it. The vast majority of students participated in the study. The spatial skills exercises from the online platform were baked into the course and made up 5% of the overall grade. Most of the measures taken were incorporated into the course, with the exception of the demographic survey, which predominantly collected socioeconomic status data, resulting in lower uptake of this measure.
The exact instruments used to collect the measures of interest were as follows. The PSVTR, which you've already seen, and has already been fairly well used in CS education research, was used as a pre- and post-test for spatial ability. The SCS1, a CS1 knowledge assessment instrument, was used to gauge prior knowledge. Demographic data was collected with a survey developed by the authors to capture family income, parental education, and native languages in order to create a socioeconomic status metric. Self-efficacy was measured with an instrument developed by Steinhorst and others. And final grades from the CS1 course were used as a measure of eventual computing success.
Students enrolled in CS1 were required to complete weekly spatial skills exercises throughout the course for full marks. They were also required to complete a pre- and post-test. The pre-test was deployed to students in the beginning of the course, and the post-test was deployed to students at the end of all training modules. Students were graded for participation, not completeness. Once we gathered and cleaned the data, we ran correlations between students' final marks, SCS1 score, self-efficacy score, demographic factors, spatial skills pre-test and post-test scores. We also created line plots to look at the relative frequency of pre-test and post-test scores between men and women.
To address our first research question, does the online platform actually develop spatial skills? We compared the mean spatial skills scores of the students before and after training. The mean gain for all students was only 1.8 points in the PSVTR, which, recall, consists of 30 items. The mean gain increased to 2.5 when we considered only students scoring below 21 points in the initial PSVTR. These students would be considered by Sorby to be the ones that needed training most. The mean increased again to 4.3 points when we considered only students who initially scored below 21 and who also completed all the training. Larger gains have been observed in the paper-based version at other institutions, usually around 6 points, but crucially the median score increased to 23 points, which is well within Sorby's region of safety. Therefore, we are confident that the course is developing spatial skills, particularly for those who really need it and engaged with the training fully. However, students mostly did not enjoy the course, with some highlighting it as their least favourite part of the programme. Of the 478 responses to a post-course survey, 20 students explicitly noted that they disliked or even hated the spatial skills component, and only 4 indicated that they enjoyed it. Moreover, there was frustration from students who didn't know why they were expected to do the training. The research evidence was given to students at the start of the course, but clearly needed to be reinforced throughout, or at least reiterated once or twice throughout the programme.
The second research question was whether spatial skills training benefits both genders. The answer was yes, and very much in line with Uddle's findings. Both men and women improved at most the same rate, though women start out with slightly lower average spatial skills and increase slightly more. When considering only men and women who completed the pre- and post-tests in spatial skills, men begin at 20.2 in the PST:R, while women begin at about 17 points. Men increase to 20.9 and women increase to 19.9. So women do increase more, but in fact they end up slightly below even where men started on average. Again, this replicates findings of UTOLs and other researchers in the area, demonstrating that on average women tend to have lower spatial skills coming into a program like this. So perhaps the kind of trying we are doing should happen earlier than university. Finally, these charts represent the frequency of spatial skills scores before and after training. You can see that women's scores, originally peaking below half marks in the pre-test, spread out and peak at a respectable 23 after training. Our final research question sought to investigate spatial ability with respect to other factors which historically relate to either computing or spatial ability, or both. We discovered no correlation between spatial skills and socioeconomic status, but we believe that this is likely due to developing a poor instrument to measure it. Our compiled survey garnered very few responses, so we expect that it was difficult to answer. This highlights the importance of using previously tested and validated measures in this kind of work, and we probably should have used something like the Family Affluence Survey, like Parker and others did. Secondly, we also saw no significant or notable correlation between spatial ability or self-efficacy. We also saw only low correlations between prior programming experience measured by the CS1 and final grades. From prior research, we would have expected these results to be somewhat higher, so in this case, can only conclude that the correlation is weak. We also observed that those with lower spatial skills were more likely to drop or fail the course. Observe the spread of the peaks in the areas under the line for students who dropped the course in pink and people who failed the course in blue versus those who passed it in purple.
Overall, we have found some interesting results which align with expectations, but it is worth noting some caveats and limitations. This is a naturalistic study. The participants were students in a program where computing is likely one of several subjects they were learning. Not only is there substantial upheaval in the beginning of a university degree, this study was also conducted at the height of the global pandemic. At the best of times, there could be any number of factors affecting the metrics that we measured, but at the time of this study, the threat of potentially confounding factors affecting the results was high. Even so, valuable insights have been gained, and perhaps give us the scope and motivation to try and isolate these findings to examine them in more controlled circumstances in the future.
To conclude, recall our process. We conducted spatial skills training and took extensive measures of factors related to spatial skills and computing success in a CS1 course. We discovered that our online training platform was effective in developing spatial skills, though perhaps not as effective as a paper-based course. We discovered that the course also helps to address the gender difference, which is often observed in spatial ability, and while women improved at a greater rate, the gap between men and women was not completely closed. We also observed some weak correlations of programming grades. We also acknowledged the challenges when conducting such a study with active students, particularly students predominantly facing university for the first time during a difficult year for the world, which may have affected these results.
Nevertheless, while not groundbreaking, these results align with previous research in the area and contribute towards the larger corpus of knowledge on factors affecting computing education outwith the classical sphere of general introductory computing. Along with the authors, Quintin, Michael Liut, and Andrew Petersen, we thank you for your time and welcome your questions, criticisms, and feedback.